Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Chiefly Football. My name's Kinlock. I am the underqualified host, and joining me today from Kansas City is Dave. Dave, how are you doing today?
Well, I'm Kinlock. I'm actually coming from the sideline here, going old school Mike. So I'm happy to be here. I'll keep you updated to anything that I see happening down here.
Yeah,
Actually, so yeah, I'm gonna break out the 1970s Monday Night Football Mike here.
yeah,
But I really don't. But I just want to do it just in case.
I can tell you that you're running quite the low budget production over there because your green screen doesn't appear to be working. I can tell that you're in the basement and you got your workboard behind you. I think it's a good look, but we can see right through it.
Alrighty then.
All right.
But it's great to be here, ready to talk Chiefs football. That's for sure.
Yes. So those of you who are just listening on the podcast, you guys are missing out on the visuals coming from Dave's side. Not much to look at on my side. So make sure you guys check us out on YouTube as well. We're posting the full episode on there, and we'll also be posting other videos, kind of reviewing and breaking down a little bit of the Chiefs film. So keep your eye out for that. Also, we're going to be working on a couple articles, some stories that are going to be coming out. I'm working on a fantasy football piece, basically a beginner's guide to fantasy football, and kind of just giving you the strategies and the things that I've picked up over the decade that I've been playing fantasy football. So make sure you guys keep your eyes out for that. And for those of you who are playing in the league with me and are trying to get an edge in dethroning me, you guys might want to check that out just to kind of see my plan for taking you guys down and see if you guys could stop that from happening and take advantage of that. Actually, now that we bring up the fantasy football, Dave, I need you to commit to playing in our fantasy football league. I sent you the invitation, and it was viewed in Messenger, but I have not seen you register a team. So I'm kind of wondering what's up with that.
Well, I've been spending all my time prepping for these podcasts.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. But also, I think that playing fantasy football could really help you in getting to know players around the league. And
that's why I have Madden.
Yeah, I don't know how much playing Madden 2008 on the PS2 is going to be helping you in today's NFL. But, I mean, Tom Brady's still here. And there's probably some kickers still floating around from back then. But I think, I think fantasy football could be good for you.
Well, we'll see what happens there, Kinlock.
All right. That sounds like a non-committal.
Not yet.
All right. Well, thanks, everybody, for joining us. We're just going to get underway with kind of our review of how the first preseason game for the Chiefs went against the San Francisco 49ers. Kansas City Chiefs made a nice comeback there at the end with our third stringers and got us the victory. Kind of, I know it's the preseason, but still don't like to lose. So I'm glad that Shane Buechele was able to get that nice game-winning drive there at the end, and that Josh Rosen, bless his heart, couldn't do anything at the end and is now no longer with the 49ers. So Dave, who are some players that stood out? We were all keeping an eye on different players, and just kind of wanted to see what they were going to show in the first action of the season. So who are some players that really stood out to you, either positively or negatively?
Well, I think Derek McKinnon obviously is getting a lot of attention, and rightfully so. I mean, he looked good. We're excited what he brought, but he also played a lot, so it was easy for he was successful while he was on the field. I think probably what I was most excited about seeing going into the game was the offensive line. I mean, not only is it a whole new offensive line, but you're talking rookies. I mean, it's just new to the Chiefs, period.
Yep.
And that's really one of the areas that they often say that it takes a while for that relationship to gel between those five and even six when you got the tight end down there. And I was impressed. Mahomes looked like he was going to be staying clean, and then after that, Henny drove him right down. So I was excited about our offensive line. They didn't do anything, to make me question any. Not that I was going to question anything anyway, but I was excited to see that, because if they're as good as what a lot of people are thinking, it's going to add some new dimensions to our offense, especially if you get the run game going. And that was one of the things that I really liked seeing, and it was with Henny, is we were getting some yards on the ground that we weren't getting previously on those short yardage situations that last year we couldn't do, and it resulted in us being horrible in the red zone.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the very first play of the game on the offensive side of the ball, I think CEH got a first down. He ran 10 yards. There was a wide open hole.
Yeah.
And then we went 3 and out after McCole Hardman dropped a pass.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, just like you said, like even the next drive, there's holes that weren't there before. And last year, people were disappointed with the production of Clyde Edwards-Helaire and all the hype that he had gotten coming to the Kansas City Chiefs. And it was just because there was nowhere to go. He's kind of a smaller guy, so he's able to fit in some of the holes don't have to be that big. And he had a couple of breakout games where he played really well. That first game against the Texans, there weren't really big holes, but he was very effective in making it work. But especially when you get down into the red zone, it was a really rough year for him. People are talking about it on the fantasy side because he gets yards and he gets usage, but he's not able to capitalize with touchdowns, which is really tough if you're drafting a running back high. And it hurt the Chiefs. Just if you can't run the ball in the goal line and all you can do is throw, it really limits what your offense can do, regardless of how good your quarterback is and how great your tight end is in the red zone and things like that.
It makes games a lot closer than they should be.
Yes. Yeah. And yes, just like you said, even at the end of games, that's a big deal, because if you're not able to run out the clock, or even if it's the third quarter, we saw that a lot. The Chiefs would get a big lead in the first half, and then they just weren't able to sustain drives or at least take time off the clock while they were marching down the field. And having a solid running game where you can milk the clock a little bit as the game goes on helps you keep the score further apart, instead of letting teams get the ball back quicker and put up some points in garbage time.
And it seems, and maybe you can let me know what your thoughts are, but kind of the indication is that this offensive line has a little attitude with it, and they want to get after people. They which hasn't seemed to be, not only was our previous offensive line more built to, pass protect, which, it's hard to do both. Mm-hmm. If you kind of, Andy's kind of picked and, shows, hey, we, pass protection is most important because that's what we're going to do. Our run game will be just an extended from the screen or the jet sweep or something along those lines. Whereas, what we're seeing is and hearing is, these players want to punch the defensive line in the mouth, and that's got to be pretty refreshing.
Yeah, well, that's something that we talked about for the last couple of years with the defense, and that's what happens when you have a team. I think the defense kind of feeds off it from the offense at times, or even from the head coach. The Chiefs' offense has always been a finesse style offense, and for a long time, the Chiefs' defense was kind of that way as well. There wasn't a lot of they didn't have that hard-nosed mindset, that tenacity that you'd like to see on defense. And it showed when they were giving up points, or at the end of games they'd get worn out. It was hard. It was hard for them to bear down and finish games, especially in the run game. There just wasn't that physicality that you'd want to see from a defense. And when Tyrann Mathieu came over, Frank Clark, that was one of the things that they really talked about was changing the culture of the defense to be more physical, to attack more, and to take pride in, they brought the swagger, and you see that on the defense. You see the swagger on the offensive side of the ball, but again, the team was built more finesse. The offensive line, that's what their style was. And so now with the new guys that they've brought in, Orlando Brown Jr., one of them, I think Smith, a right guard, 6th-round pick, probably going to be starting and had a good week on Saturday. That was his favorite thing to do in college was to run block. He said that that's what he loves to do is just to destroy people and just to put them into the ground. And then Joe Tooney, we know, is a very capable run blocking guard that came over from New England. So I think that they kind of did the same thing that they did with the defense. They kind of are changing the culture of the offensive line in bringing in guys that can pass block because that's the main concern. But bringing in people that are also confident and determined to make their presence felt in the run game as well. All right. So I think for me, there were a couple of players that I was looking at. Jerick McKinnon, that was a big one, and actually, Gene on our Facebook page, was talking about Jerick McKinnon and just was cautioning fans about the fact that he's been injured. The last 2 seasons, he had signed big deals with the 49ers, and he was going to be their number 1 running back, and he barely got on the field the last 2 years. So we love what we saw from Jerick McKinnon in that game. The juice that he brought, like you had talked about, it really showed up on the field, especially compared to CEH, who's got a little bit of a different style. But I'm really excited for what he could do. But like Gene was pointing out, it's all dependent on whether he can stay healthy and can make it through the season and contribute often enough to warrant the spot and to warrant the excitement. I don't know how I feel about him wearing number 1. I don't know if you noticed that during the game. That was one of the things that stood out to me was all the players wearing different jersey numbers. I saw defensive backs wearing number 2 and McKinnon wearing 1. Those are the ones that really stood out to me. But it was weird. And I watch a lot of college football. I'm used to, single digit wide receivers. I saw Michigan quarterbacks wearing numbers in the 80s and 90s for a couple of years, which was weird. But I thought it was going to be natural kind of going to the NFL, and I'm just not sure I like it.
Well, I know Tom Brady early on, he complained about it because that was how he could identify the safety versus the linebacker and kind of, who was going to be, where they were supposed to be. So, I'm all for throwing number 1 on Dan Sorensen if they'll be confused and not sure who he is if he's in coverage.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know.
He didn't change his number. Okay.
Yeah, and even if he did, I don't know. He might have some other traits that might give him away as being the Dirty Dan Sorensen.
Yes.
All right, and then a couple of the players, and these guys are 2 of the big names that we've been talking about. A lot of fans have been talking about DeAndre Baker and Mike Hughes, both former 1st-round picks. We traded for Mike Hughes this offseason. We had signed DeAndre Baker after he got cut from the New York Giants. And, we kind of went into this game hoping that we could see them potentially being contributors to the starting defense. And I don't know what your thoughts were. I thought DeAndre Baker played well. He played a little bit further into the game with the twos most of the time. I thought he played pretty well. Mike Hughes, I was impressed with. I thought he did a good job when he was on the field on defense, and then he had some really nice kick returns, which I was not expecting. And when he lowered his shoulder to run into one of those guys. Showed some toughness and um, just that that commitment. He wants to make this team. He's going to do whatever it takes. And I mean, kick returning's fun, especially when you're a defensive player. Don't always get the ball in your hands. But I mean, he wasn't afraid to lower his shoulder and take it to them. And you just love to see that kind of physicality from defensive backs.
Yeah, and I'm sure Dave Tobe liked that opportunity. I don't know if that's kind of an indicator that maybe they're going to take some of that away from Hardman from the special teams. It was Tyreek when he first came up. That's what he was doing, and then they kind of just transitioned him to wide receiver as he got more on his plate there. Maybe they're hoping Hardman's going to make that step, and they can really rely on him in on the offensive side. And just like you said, I'm sure he was like the idea of being the kick return. Same thing with Baker. I'm excited to see both of those a little bit more on the defensive side. I feel good about where we are for a change in our defensive backfield from years before, just because of the depth that they've been able to add of, just like you said, previous number one picks.
Yeah. Well, I think Brett Veach has done a great job. Chad commented on our Facebook page, and that's one of the things that he really talked about was how impressed he was with Brett Veach and the things that he's done. I mean, during the whole time that he's been here, everybody talks about him being the one to get Mahomes or to really push for Mahomes. His first draft was a little rough, but then ever since then, it hasn't been just about the drafts, but just the people he's been able to pick up as undrafted free agents, trading for Charvarius Ward in the preseason, and he's been a great contributor. They drafted Snead late in the round. They drafted Smith in the 6th round. He's probably going to be starting for us. Jerick McKinnon, Baker, Hughes, signing Jaron Reed this offseason. Veach has done a lot of under the radar things that are putting the Chiefs in a really good position because they're able to get these players for cheap. I mean, DeAndre Baker, Mike Hughes, both 1st-round picks. And if he had, if he basically got those 1st-round picks for free, a couple years into their NFL careers, but they're both young, and they both have all that potential. And Veach has shown that the Chiefs and the Chiefs coaching staff has shown that they can plug in a lot of these lesser known players and can get good results for them. So being able to get 2 defensive backs who have all of the traits for a number 1 pick, I'm excited to see what they can turn them into. And we've had a couple corners in here, like Breland. We've had him for the last couple of years, and he was good, but he's towards the end of his career, and he's gone on to another team. But being able to rebuild that defensive backfield cheaply and with youth is really going to help our team moving forward because we're going to have young players who can develop, and we're also going to be able to do it cheaply. As we were always talking about Mahomes, and when his money comes due, the Chiefs are going to have to find ways to support him with very little money.
Yeah, and I think and not only Veach finding those people, but kudos to the coaching staff who are definitely coaching them up. I mean, we're pretty lucky to have Spagnuolo and his defensive group, and then obviously Andy and EB and the coaching staff at the skills set. I mean, Andy's resume as far as coaches who have left his staff and have gone elsewhere speaks for itself. But that all lends to the type of person that he brings in as teachers. And even at this level, Veach is making sure it's the right fit, and then the coaches are making sure that that player knows what his responsibilities are doing and getting them to do it. I mean, pulling somebody from Missouri S&T and plugging them in, just as you said, it's it's not. we've got a lot, a lot of, good layers there.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, we really are spoiled here as Chiefs fans. You look around the league, and a lot of teams have the quarterback, but don't have the coach or the GM. I mean, most teams have one, but not the other two. Or the GMs and the head coaches aren't on the same page, or they can't develop the players properly. It's very rare to have a situation like the Chiefs have right now, where the front office and the coaching staff works so well together. They have the quarterback in place, and the quarterback is completely bought into what the team's doing. He's you know working his contract in a way that helps the team, and just I mean, you hear the way that they talk about each other, Mahomes, Reed, Beach, and you just know that there's a ton of mutual respect there, and that there's a really strong foundation for continued success that you don't, that's rare in the NFL.
It's all about the culture. We hear that all the time about the culture of the Chiefs, and every time we sign somebody new, where Reed has mentioned it, it feels like it's a family culture in there. And I think that makes a difference. We've all had a work environment. Hopefully we've worked in an environment that we really felt cohesive, and as a result, everybody was more successful. And most of us have probably worked in a work environment that was totally the opposite of that. And and as a result, that organization can't achieve, even the sum of its parts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I guess I'll just finish touching on a couple of the of the guys that I was keeping an eye on. Noah Gray, I was keeping an eye on him. I didn't see a whole lot. Really, the play that sticks out is the interception that happened when Chad Henne threw him the ball. Ball was behind him. Noah Gray got a hand on it and got popped up in the air and intercepted. But
that's on the quarterback. That's on the quarterback.
That is on the quarterback.
Yes.
Totally agree. Didn't see much of Nick Bolton. So I'm gonna be keeping an eye on him, especially now that Willie Gay is going to be back for this game. I'm really interested to see how those two play together. Cornell Powell, I thought he looked good, especially towards the end. I mean, Shane Buechele loved him at the end of that game, and he made some really really big plays there in crunch time towards the end of the game, and that's what you want to see. You want to make sure that the players that you want to do well are putting good film out there. And so we saw some good things from them. Obviously, they were running against the third team defense, but I mean, you want them, if they're out there against the third team defense, you want them to do well against them.
Right.
You don't want them getting shut down by the third team defense. Not a good
because he's a third teamer right now.
Yep.
That's what he is.
Mm-hmm. And if you look good against third teamers, you could be a second teamer. That's how it works. So definitely glad to see him play well. And then Devin Key, I don't know if you have any takes on him. Had some big plays, both positively and negatively. First play, after the play, you're just like, oh man. Everybody was really looking forward to Devin Key coming out to show what he could do as an undrafted free agent, kind of the darling of camp, and gets burned for like an 80-yard touchdown against the rookie quarterback from San Francisco. And I didn't see a lot about what people were saying, but just with the people that we were watching, there was a lot of I don't know what you would call it, like disgust. Like, just how could that happen? Oh, he's not as good as we were hearing. Like, he just ruined it with one play, and that was like the first play we saw him really. I don't know if you had any thoughts on that, but I went back and watched the play, and I felt like I saw it in real time. Like, that was a really tough play for him to make, especially undrafted rookie, only a couple weeks in camp learning the defense. So he's already kind of like trying to figure things out. But then the San Francisco 49ers run this really well-designed play that takes advantage of the quarterback's really strong arm fast receiver, and just the fact that the defense was not game planning for plays like this. The quarterback rolls out to his weak side. The whole offense, the whole defense is flowing towards him. The receiver that is on his side of the field, on Key's side of the field, cuts in to go to the other side where the quarterback's going. So he floats that way, and then all of a sudden, this receiver from the other side of the field runs a post route and goes over the top. Quarterback flips his hips and throws a bomb back the other way. Like that's a really well designed play. And so ideally, if you're a starting safety in the NFL and you're game planning for offenses like this, maybe you have a little bit more discipline, but given those circumstances, the fact that it's a preseason game, that's not a play that you often see in a preseason game. I think the 49ers really just wanted to give their quarterback some confidence and, build up some hype around him, and it worked.
It was, on the flip side, if you're a 49ers fan, they were all like, yes, we got our quarterback. This is exactly what we wanted. Somebody who could throw it across the field, and deliver an 80-yard touchdown strike. Right. So, and like you said, after reviewing that, it wasn't Keys necessarily getting burned. It was Shanahan taking out a rookie is what it was. Taking a rookie to school is what it is. And so, I think that you bring up a great point that, we just saw the end result, but we've got to look at the big picture and recognize that, that was a well-designed play. And, that they created that for Trey Lance to be successful. And there's no question that they knew that they could dial that up, especially with an unproven defensive back there, right? That there was a high likelihood that play was going to be successful, versus maybe having Tyrann back there or somebody else. So, yeah, we'll just take it with that. I do know that he also made a great play on saving a touchdown when Thornhill fell down.
Yeah.
So I'm still excited to see what's going to happen. I think crowning him a starting safety in the NFL after training camp by a lot of media people is a little extreme. So we'll just I'm excited to see him grow.
Yeah, if people were expecting him to be able to step in and start, then they were just they had unrealistic expectations. I think the talk was about him just being able to make the team as an undrafted free agent in the safety position. So that's what we're looking for. That's what I'm looking for, is just to see if he's good enough to make the team as an undrafted free agent. I'm not looking at him to start. I just want him to be able to contribute, give breathers to the safeties, or fill in as a third safety when we need to, and then contribute on special teams. So that kind of leaves me, talking about Thornhill slipped and fell on that play that you talked about, where Devin Key made the touchdown saving tackle. That takes us into our segment. But basically, we're trying to figure out what our level of concern is for these storylines that are going on. And to do that, we're going to use the P scale. All right, so 10, your pants are soaked, got to get home ASAP. You just embarrassed yourself, and you're never going to hear the end of it for the rest of your life. 1, pants are completely dry, everything's normal. And then maybe in the middle, 5, small spot in front of your pants. You can cover it up with your hands or with a towel or, bag, whatever you got on you, but still manageable to avoid public embarrassment. So where are you? Let's start with Hardman. Or no, let's go ahead and start with Thornhill, since that's kind of where we're coming from. Thornhill played almost the entire second half. He was running with the 3s, running with the 2s, and it was pretty shocking to see how long he stayed in there when almost every other contributor to the Chiefs' regular season was off the field. So, where on this P scale are you with Juan Thornhill and his ability to start for the Chiefs or to even make the roster?
Well, I'm going to say that on that scale, I'm on the stage fright scale where I'm just standing at the urinal, nothing's happening, and I don't know why. And because there's all a crowd of people around, and I need them to leave so I can just relax.
Yeah.
So, there's so much talk about Thornhill. Um, you know, it looked like that he had started getting back to where he was his rookie year at the end of last season as we got through the playoffs. We thought maybe, he had recovered from his ACL and he started looking like that player that we knew or that we saw ascending prior to his injury. And then to see that not only is he playing, at the end of the first preseason games, but he's also running with the threes in training camp. And so it's kind of a mystery for me. I know that there's a lot of talk going on out there. Is he fully recovered from his ACL? Is he, is he not catching on to the mental aspects of it? Or is he just slowed down, period? Or, so I don't know. I definitely don't have an answer for that. And so that's what I'm going to use these next couple of preseason games to see if Thornhill is getting back to who he was, or if he's just a shell out there. So I'm not peeing.
Yeah. So is this like a wait and see, or is this
Yeah.
like a I'm frightened, but
It's kidney stones.
okay, okay.
It's painful, but I'm hoping it'll pass.
All right. Yeah. Well, my pants are a little wet. There's something running down the leg. I think. I think there's definitely some concern there that that even before he was able to show anything on game film, that he was already running with the twos and threes. I think sometimes, or you would think that training camp you wouldn't really be able to tell what a player is going to look like on the field as far as like what their 100% is going to look like until they're actually playing in a game. And just the fact that they started him with the twos and threes doesn't look like a good sign because there's something that's obvious enough that they're keeping him down there, and then and maybe it's just that they weren't sure, so that just to be safe they were playing him with the twos and threes. But I haven't heard anything different about him moving up for this game. I think he's still running with the threes in practice and with the twos. And it's definitely not something that you want for the team because I think Thornhill would be a huge piece into making this defense um, one of the best, definitely one of the better ones in the NFL. And if we're having to run Sorensen out there often, especially when teams are probably going to be playing catch up and throwing the ball a lot, probably not the matchup that you want to see with Sorensen out there. So, unless Key is able to really step up and kind of fill in a little bit there, we really need Thornhill um, to try to get back to the level that he was playing at before he got hurt. All right, and then second one. I think this is probably the biggest thing that I saw that was being talked about, and Marcus had talked about it on the Facebook page, and he is really concerned about the lack of a number 2 wide receiver. It seems at this point we have obviously Tyreek Hill number 1, and then we have Byron Pringle, Demarcus Robinson, and Mecole Hardman all looking like number 3s. I don't feel like I saw enough from Robinson or Hardman really during that first game to really decide either way. So I'm probably at a 1. I think my pants are dry, and there's another reason for that I'll get into in a second. But mostly because there just wasn't a lot to see. Um, Mahomes wasn't in there; he was only in there for one drive. Now McCall Hardman did have a drop, um, but I mean, to me, that's one drop isn't that big of a deal. Um, to me, is he running the right routes? Is he improving on that? Is he gaining separation? Is he running? Is he performing his role in the offense the way he's expected to? And can Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid trust him to be in the right spots and to do the right things? And to me, it was too early to tell based on that criteria. You know that if they're doing all of those things, the catches will come. I don't really have concerns about Hardman's catching. Robinson, on the other hand, feels like he's probably in the right spot most of the time, but he makes a lot of big drops, um, and then just doesn't seem to always get open. Pringle had a great touchdown catch in that game, and I feel like he's always somebody who tends to produce when he plays, but for whatever reason, he's just never able to crack into the starting lineup. So where are you on the P scale with the Chiefs' number two receiver, whether we have one, um, or whether you're confident somebody will eventually fill that role?
They are what they are, as Denny Green said. They are. I don't know that it's possible Hardman. Yeah, again, we've talked about this last year. He didn't have the benefit of OTAs in his second year, or training camp or anything along those lines. And so that was a lot of a growth opportunity that he would have taken from year one to year two. So is he going to take that? Is he going to make that step exponentially here in year three? I don't know. I haven't seen any indicators that he is, but that's what these preseasons, will let us know. As far as DeMarcus, he is what he is. We've seen what he is, and he I don't know why we would expect him to suddenly change into a number two. I know that everybody loves Byron Pringle, but he hasn't been able to break into that lineup, period. And if he could, Andy would have had him out there. So there's obviously a reason that he hasn't been able to establish himself in that mix. So yeah, I'm all wet. I don't see the Chiefs having currently a number two on this roster. But you know what? But that's okay.
Right. So okay. So would you say that it should be a high priority for the Chiefs to go out and find somebody, maybe a cap casualty that gets cut from a team during the preseason to fill that number two role, or do you think money would be better spent somewhere else, or do you think we have enough tools around in the offense that the number two receiver shouldn't be, as big of a concern as it was in years past?
Yeah, no, I would go with the latter, for a couple of reasons. Number one is everybody knows how complicated Andy's offense is. So the likelihood of bringing somebody in unfamiliar with that and getting them on the same page and performing like a number two, that's a stretch. Best case, they might perform like a number three, because Andy likes to have all of his receivers, being able to play in all the different positions and slots. So I don't see that as an option. I don't think you're going to bring in somebody who's going to be marketably better as a whole. But I think you hit upon kind of what my thinking is we've got too many other weapons that we can use. Kelsey effectively is a number two, or a 1A, a 1B. It's Tyreek and Kelsey. Then you've got CEH, who will definitely, he's been working on pass protection and trying to get to be an every down back. So I see him as a more viable weapon. If Derek McKinnon can stay healthy, that's another asset. But I think it's really going to come up to Mahomes. If there's not a true number two, he's got to elevate those other players around him. I'm trying to think, through the Patriots' successful years, who was their number twos? I know who their number ones were. I don't know who their number two was. It was Wes Welker and Gronk. Randy Moss, Wes Welker was probably around, but he wasn't, what he evolved to be. You had Edelman. I couldn't tell you who their other receivers are. They were constantly going through, that receiving core. And I'm even looking at Green Bay. Who does Rodgers have? He has a receiver, a one. I don't know who his two is.
Doesn't have one.
So, which is probably why he was complaining and wanting out anyway. But so I think that, that would be a luxury for our offense. But I would really like to see Mahomes elevate, that individual, whoever it is. But yeah, I'm not worried about that.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think one of the biggest factors in team building with the Kansas City Chiefs is Mahomes' contract, and it was nice to have Sammy Watkins on probably he was probably overpaid. I'd say because he got us a Super Bowl victory and really contributed in the playoffs, it was worth it. But compared to the market, overpaid, and he was a good two when he was able to be on the field, but the Chiefs aren't going to be able to sign those tier 2 wide receivers and definitely not tier 1 receivers in free agency while Mahomes is being paid as much as he's going to be getting paid. So they have to either rely on the draft or on cheaper free agents. So definitely, Mahomes is going to have to show it earlier than later, being able to work with less skilled receivers. Luckily, we do have Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce to kind of keep that buffer there. So there's still a lot of elite playmakers, like you said, CEH coming out of the backfield, Jerick McKinnon, and we, Noah Gray, Jody Fortson. We haven't talked about yet, but he played well in the preseason game. But I feel like we added Noah Gray, we added Fortson, and we added McKinnon, 3 playmakers that we didn't have last year. And we basically just lost Sammy Watkins, and he was only on the field for 4 games out of the season. So I think we have more playmakers now than we did last year, just maybe not at the same position. But that just means that our offense is going to look different. We're probably going to have a lot more 2 wide receiver sets. And Travis Kelce, he plays out wide most of the time. Noah Gray has the same exact skill set. He can do the same thing. So we could still run a 4 receiver set with Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce, Noah Gray, or Jody Fortson. And then you can have Hardman, to add some more speed, or Robinson or Pringle. They become a little bit less important because they become the 4th receiver on that. And that's obviously anticipating Noah Gray to be what we expect him or what we think that he can be from the jump. But then also just seeing, 2 running back sets. CEH didn't get the ball in the passing game as much as people were expecting him to last year. That was kind of his calling card coming out of LSU, was his ability to catch the ball. They said he was the best route runner out of all the running backs. And we just didn't see it last year. And I think a lot of that is just him learning the playbook and him still trying to work on his pass blocking where they can actually use him on all 3 downs instead of having to take him out for 3rd down. But if you have him, Jerick McKinnon, who can run routes just as well at the wide receiver position, most of the game you could only have 2 wide receivers out there at times, where you have 2 tight end sets or 1 tight end and 2 running backs, and you can there's so much flexibility when you have an offense and you have different weapons at all of those positions. So again, the Chiefs' offense may not look like the same one from the last couple of years, where we're running 4 wide receiver sets and we have the 1, the 2, the 3, and the 4 receivers. But teams aren't teams are going to be looking for that. They're not going to know. They're not going to recognize the Chiefs' offense as much this year, and just the creativity that Andy Reid brings, and just the flexibility again that tight ends being able to run routes as receivers, running backs being able to run routes as receivers. We have tons of playmakers, skilled players who can fill those roles without actually having a number two wide receiver. So I agree with you, Dave. I don't think it's really that big of a concern. My pants are dry, and um, I'm really excited to see what this offense looks like, and just for Andy Reid to kind of unleash his creativity.
Well, even if they, as you were talking about that, it also was, if we have a semblance of a run game, that makes a difference as well to those number 2 and 3 receivers. If the defense has to take into account that there's a possibility of running, which they didn't have to last year. Buffalo didn't anticipate it and they got run over, but that was about it. But that's another thing that can help those receivers as well. If the defensive, it has to account for that. That's if they knew it was a pass every single time, I think we've seen that Hardman and those guys aren't gonna get free. But if there's a little bit of questioning, that I'm excited. Yeah, like you said, I'm excited to see, what our offense looks like.
All right. Well, I got some daughters that are making some noise upstairs. I think they're getting ready for bed. Time for me to wrap this up. I still got dishes to do, and so let's just go ahead and close this one out. Um, what are you looking for the game tomorrow night, Friday night?
All right. Well, we'll wrap this up quick. I'll tell you what I'm looking forward to is I know on the Cardinals side, Kyler Murray, they're excited to see Kyler Murray, but with their revamped wide receivers, Hopkins, AJ Green is now there. And then they've picked up Rondell Moore and Greg Dietrich. So they're really excited to see what their offense is going to look like. So I'm excited to see how we've talked about our defensive backs. I'm excited to see what our defense looks like against, a pretty strong looking receiver core. So, and obviously with Murray. So I'm excited to see how our defensive backs react and facing some pretty solid wide receivers.
Yeah. Yeah, the Arizona Cardinals, I mean, they're probably considered the worst team in their division, but that's probably got to be the strongest division in football right now, with the Cardinals at the bottom, but looking like a really promising team with a good offense. Still trying to figure things out on defensive side, but they got J.J. Watt now, and looking to see if they can squeeze something out of him at the end of his career. Then you got the Rams, the Seahawks, and the 49ers in that division. So definitely going to be quite the battle in that division. And I'm, like you said, I'm excited to see some of those players and kind of see how the Chiefs match up against them. What I'm probably looking forward to the most, again, is probably to see Willie Gay in his first action in the preseason, see how him and Nick Bolton do together, as hopefully, just giving us glimpses of the linebacking core of the future. And probably just looking at which players are getting more snaps with, the different teams. So if there's a player running with the second team, if they're getting more snaps on the first team, obviously that's an indication that the coaching staff liked what they saw from the last game or liked in practices, and they want to see what they're doing. And then conversely, if if we see Thornhill start again, if he's just working with the third team, it's really not looking good, and I'm gonna have to change my pants. So I mean, we're gonna have problems there. So I'm really just curious to see, the playing time and kind of judge based off that what the coaches are seeing and thinking about certain players and their chances of making the team and contributing, during the regular season. All right. So thanks everybody for joining us for this episode of Chiefly Football. Dave, thank you for joining me. Your insight was spot on as always.
Great to be here. Appreciate it.
Yep. We missed Staten and Marcus today. They'll be back next week, and we'll be able to bring their additional insight. We are active on social media. As we mentioned, we're interacting quite a bit on Facebook. Also active on Twitter and Instagram and TikTok. So follow us at Chiefly Football. Give us a follow. We really want to hear from you guys. I mean, we really like to interact with you guys. We love the insight that you guys have, and we, like you see, we bring it up on the show, and we can help address some of the concerns that people have, or if people bring up good points. I mean, we're gonna let people know. So, and that's the best part of what we're doing here at Chiefly Football, and getting to know all the Chiefs fans and giving everybody a chance to be heard on this podcast. So find us on social media, and we'll talk to you guys later. Have a great night.